David Harrington sat on the edge of the exam table, fingers locked together, trying to steady a pulse that refused to behave. For a man used to commanding rooms filled with executives and investors, this small medical space felt strangely overwhelming. The walls were quiet. His breathing was uneven. His mind had no script for what came next. He checked the clock again. 8 minutes had passed. 8 minutes of waiting for a routine checkup he didn't even want to attend. He exhaled and tried to relax his shoulders, but the door clicked open. A woman in a white coat stepped in with confident steps and a clipboard pressed against her chest. She didn't look up immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington," she said. "I'll be conducting your exam today." Her voice, warm, steady, familiar, too familiar. He lifted his head slowly. She finally looked up. Their eyes met. Pamela, his Pamela, the woman he lost, the woman he never stopped thinking about, the woman whose absence had hollowed out more space in him than he ever admitted. His heartbeat spiked so sharply he almost reached for his chest. Pamela froze too, just for a second, before regaining the calm, controlled posture of a physician trying not to break character. "David," she breathed. His throat tightened. "Pamela, you're here?" She nodded once. "I work in this department now." Silence thickened in the room, but not the cold kind. More like a pause that carried 1,000 unfinished stories. She tried to continue professionally, lifting the stethoscope. "Let's begin your exam." He barely heard the instructions. He barely processed the questions. His mind kept repeating one truth. The woman he once loved was standing inches away. But the moment he thought the shock couldn't deepen, something stirred near the door. A tiny shadow. A soft shuffle. Pamela turned too late. A small girl peeked inside. Big bright eyes, soft brown skin, curls bouncing, a toy stethoscope hanging around her neck. A child. A little girl who looked no more than 4. But what stopped David's breath were her eyes. His eyes. Same shape, same depth, same unmistakable light. Time didn't just pause, it punched the air out of him. The child blinked. "Mommy, I forgot my..." Pamela's entire posture snapped with panic. "Zara, sweetheart, you can't be in here. Zara." Her name was Zara. Pamela rushed toward her, trying to gently guide her out of the room, but the moment had already happened. David had seen everything. The resemblance, the truth, the silent confession in Pamela's trembling shoulders. His voice came out quiet, rough, stunned. "Pamela, is she..." Pamela didn't answer. She didn't need to, because every heartbeat in David's chest was already telling him the truth he never expected to face. The child who just walked into the room had his eyes. What would you do if the child you never knew existed walked right into your doctor's appointment? Pamela had raised Zara on her own. David had no idea he was a father. And the timing couldn't be worse, because powerful people in his life had already taken notice. Stay with me. Because what happens next forces a billionaire to choose between power and the only family he never knew he had. But before we continue, hit like so YouTube pushes this story out to more people. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. These stories take hours to craft, and every click truly helps the channel grow. Welcome back to Mr. Dave's Stories, where every story reminds us that growth is possible, healing is real, and lessons are everywhere. If this is your first time, here, we're honored to have you. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story that might uplift, inspire, or change the way you see life. Pamela hurried into the hallway with Zara perched on her hip, whispering something soft to calm her. David stayed frozen in the exam room, the air thick with a realization that refused to loosen its grip. He pressed a hand to the counter, steadying himself. A daughter. He had a daughter. A little girl whose smile had lit the doorway. A child he never knew existed. He inhaled slowly, trying to keep the shock from swallowing him whole. But he needed answers. He needed the truth, gentle or not. He stepped into the hallway just as Pamela returned, her expression caught between duty and fear. "David, we'll talk," she whispered. "But not here. Not yet." Her voice trembled on the last word. He nodded, because there was nothing else to do. For now, Pamela disappeared into another room to finish her rounds, leaving him standing alone under the quiet hospital lights. David left the building a few minutes later, the crisp air hitting him like a splash of cold water. He walked slowly toward the parking lot, each step heavier than the last. His mind replayed Zara's face, her curious eyes, her tiny voice, her resemblance to him so unmistakable it felt unreal. He reached the sidewalk, exhaling sharply, but the breath stopped halfway out. A sleek black town car sat at the curb. The back door opened. His mother stepped out. Her expression held no warmth, no softness, only rigid control and calculated concern. "David," she called, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. "We need to talk." He didn't move. She approached with the calm certainty of someone who always got answers. "I was at the hospital earlier," she said. "Security informed me you were here. I saw something unexpected." David's jaw clenched. She paused, studying his face. "Who is the child, David?" His pulse thudded against his ribs. She took one more step, lowering her voice. "We need to discuss the child I saw today." The ground beneath him shifted. His mother had seen Zara. And now, before he even had the chance to understand what his new reality meant, his family had questions of their own. Questions that would force him into a battle he never prepared for. Questions that would change everything. Southeast Washington, D.C. always woke up before the sun did. The neighborhood breathed differently from the rest of the city. Steady, unpolished, honest. Pamela felt that honesty every morning before she even opened her eyes. It lived in the bus engines rolling down Alabama Avenue, in the voices drifting through thin townhouse walls, and in the soft kitchen sounds her aunt made as if breakfast were a daily prayer. Pamela lay still for a moment, letting her body finish pulling itself out of sleep. Her blue scrubs hung freshly ironed on the door. Her work badge lay neatly beside her phone. Today's shift would be long, and she already felt it in her shoulders. Working in healthcare wasn't a job, it was a rhythm, one she had learned the hard way. But before she could rise, a small tug at her blanket pulled her back to the present. "Mommy." Zara's sleepy whisper brushed softly against the quiet room. Pamela turned her head to see her daughter sitting up, curls flattened on one side, clutching her stuffed animal with the determination of someone guarding a treasure. Pamela smiled gently. "Hey, sunshine. You're awake early." Zara blinked dramatically, the kind of blink only a 4-year-old could get away with. "You're going to the doctor place again?" Pamela reached over and brushed a curl away from Zara's cheek. "Mommy has her shift today, but Auntie Rochelle will be with you until daycare." Zara's lips pushed into a tiny pout, the universal language of childhood disappointment. "I don't like when you go." Pamela pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I know, but you love the snacks at daycare, remember?" Zara paused, then nodded with a dramatic sigh. "Do they have the rainbow pretzels today?" "They might," Pamela teased. "If they don't, I'm telling Miss Keisha they tricked me." Pamela laughed low in her chest. "Who taught you that word?" "Auntie Rochelle," Zara said. "She used it when the cake had no frosting." Pamela shook her head. Only her aunt could turn a missing dessert topping into a vocabulary lesson. She scooped Zara into her arms and they made their way downstairs. Each step creaked, not from age, but from familiarity. These were the sounds Zara had grown up with, the sounds Pamela had learned to be grateful for. Rochelle stood at the stove, flipping eggs as though she had all the time in the world. Her hair was wrapped, and her robe was tied loosely at her waist. She glanced over her shoulder when Pamela entered. "There she is," Rochelle said with a grin. "The busiest woman in Southeast." Pamela rolled her eyes affectionately. "Good morning to you too, Auntie." Rochelle kissed Zara's cheek before placing her in a chair. "Eat up, princess. You have a long day of daycare politics ahead." Zara nodded solemnly. "I'm ready." Pamela grabbed a cup of water and took a slow sip. The coolness grounded her. Her mind was already flipping through charts, patients, and schedules. She reached into her bag to double-check everything: stethoscope, ID badge, lunch. Rochelle studied her from across the kitchen table. "You look tired." "I am tired. I mean tired," Rochelle clarified. "Not work tired, something else tired." Pamela didn't answer. Rochelle leaned against the counter. "Still thinking about him?" "Auntie." Pamela sighed. "Please don't start." "I'm not starting," Rochelle said, lifting her hands as if surrendering. "I'm observing." Pamela grabbed her bag. "I can't think about that right now. I have too much to handle." But the truth sat behind her ribs, quiet, steady, unresolved. She didn't regret Zara. Never would. But she remembered the collapse of her relationship with David more clearly than she wanted to. She remembered how silence slowly replaced closeness, how exhaustion swallowed their time. how she left without telling him she was carrying more than heartbreak, and she remembered convincing herself that stepping away was mercy, not betrayal. Life comes back around, you know, Rochelle added, her tone soft, almost knowing. Pamela shook her head. Not everything circles back, Auntie. Rochelle smirked, as if she knew something Pamela didn't. If you say so. Zara reached out toward Pamela. Mommy, can you braid my hair? Pamela's expression softened instantly. Of course. She set her bag down and pulled a comb from the drawer. Zara climbed into her lap and sat proudly, folding her tiny hands in her lap. Pamela parted her curls, humming under her breath, letting the intimacy of the moment calm her nerves. These mornings were her anchor. They reminded her of why she worked as hard as she did. When she finished, Zara twisted her head to examine Pamela's work. I look beautiful. You always do, Pamela said. She helped Zara put on her small jacket, then lifted her again for a final hug. Be good today. I'm always good, Zara declared with confidence that did not always match the facts. Pamela laughed. She kissed her cheek one more time before setting her down. Outside, the morning air felt cool and assertive. Southeast weather didn't play games. Pamela pulled her jacket tighter as she walked to her old sedan, the one she had kept running with prayer, persistence, and Rochelle's neighbor's advice. She passed familiar faces on the block. Mr. Jenkins watering his sidewalk, teenagers heading to the bus stop debating last night's basketball scores, someone blasting music from their porch far too early. This neighborhood, flawed and loud and loving, had raised her nearly as much as her aunt had. And it was raising her daughter too. She slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. The car coughed in protest before settling. Pamela placed her hand on the steering wheel, taking a moment to steady her breath. You're doing okay, Pam, she whispered to herself. Some days that whispered affirmation had to be enough. As she drove toward the hospital, the city shifted around her. Murals brightened brick walls. Corner stores nodded with early customers. A child rushed across the sidewalk chasing a ball. Pamela's eyes followed every detail, absorbing the life around her. She passed the community center where Zara had tried tumbling class and immediately declared she was too advanced for baby flips. Pamela smiled at the memory. She passed the carry-out spot Rochelle swore had the best wings on earth. She passed the exact street where older men gathered each morning to debate everything from politics to weather predictions. Her world, her rhythm. Halfway through the drive, Pamela's phone buzzed in the cup holder with a notification from her hospital group chat. A nurse dropping a shift, a doctor asking for coverage, the usual chaos. She ignored it for now. She needed a few more silent minutes before the noise took over. If you're watching this and life ever forced you to rebuild from scratch, drop a comment below. Your story matters too. As she pulled into the hospital's employee lot, the sun began lifting over the Capitol skyline, streaking the morning with orange and gold. Pamela parked in her usual spot, third row, far left, and grabbed her bag. Walking through the lot, she tightened her coat around her. The day would demand every ounce of her strength. It always did, but she had learned to show up anyway. For patience, for family, for Zara. What she didn't know was that the past she tried so carefully to store in a quiet corner of her heart was already waiting for her inside the building, waiting in a room she didn't expect to enter, waiting in the eyes she didn't expect to meet again, waiting in a heartbeat she once knew as well as her own. But for now, Pamela smoothed her scrubs, fixed her badge, took a steady breath, and stepped into a day that would change everything. Upper Northwest D.C. always woke up quietly, not silent, but controlled, like the neighborhood believed peace should follow a schedule. The streets were lined with tidy lawns and polished townhomes, and even the air seemed to move with intention. It was a world that valued stability as much as its residents valued influence. David Harrington stood in the middle of his bedroom, the early morning light slipping through the large windows. The room looked flawless, neatly made bed, spotless dresser, perfectly aligned photos and awards. Everything appeared balanced and impressive. Except David. His alarm buzzed at 6:10 a.m. He turned it off, but remained seated at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, shoulders heavy. 39 years old, successful by every measurable standard, and yet somehow carrying a weight he had no language for. He rubbed his jaw, letting the quiet wrap around him. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It wasn't calming. It was hollow, an echo of everything he once had but never learned to hold on to. He rose slowly, stretching the stiffness from his back before crossing the room toward his dresser. A small, worn notebook rested there, looking out of place among luxury watches and framed certificates. The cover edges were bent, the pages soft from years of handling. It was the only thing in the room that held a heartbeat. He picked it up and flipped through the pages. Most were empty. He had stopped writing years ago, the moment life became more about quarterly targets than personal purpose. But there was one sentence he never forgot, one sentence he wrote the night his world quietly broke. Don't lose something real while chasing things that don't breathe. He exhaled deeply, running his thumb across the ink before setting the notebook down again. That memory always tightened his chest. He hadn't lost Pamela in one dramatic moment. He lost her slowly, through missed dinners, unanswered calls, and 1,000 well-meaning excuses. He thought giving her space was the right thing. He thought she needed room to grow. He thought time would bring them back together. He thought wrong. He shook off the memory and walked toward the kitchen. His assistant, Claire, had already updated his phone with his schedule for the day. 8 a.m., board call 9:30 a.m., medical checkup 11 a.m., investor briefing 1 p.m., lunch with senator's aide 3:30 p.m., quarterly review meeting. It was a typical day, demanding, structured, predictable. But the medical appointment tugged at him. He hated checkups. Not because he feared bad news, he feared losing control. Doctors' offices expose vulnerability, something he wasn't used to showing. He opened the refrigerator. Rows of identical meal containers stared back at him, organized with military precision. Water bottles lined up neatly, yogurts placed by flavor. Everything looked efficient, but none of it felt like home. He grabbed a bottle of water and leaned against the counter. His townhouse was beautiful, sleek furniture, curated art, polished hardwood floors, and panoramic views of Rock Creek Park. But beauty didn't equal warmth. The place felt like a showroom, stunning but untouched. He took a long sip of water and allowed himself one last moment of stillness before the day swept him into responsibilities. Downstairs, his driver waited beside a black SUV. David walked out, adjusting his jacket. The morning was crisp, the type of air that hinted at seasonal change. "Good morning, sir," the driver greeted. "Morning," David responded, sliding into the back seat. As they drove through the wealthy neighborhood, runners passed by wearing matching athletic gear. Couples walked dogs that likely had more structured routines than most adults. Parents pushed strollers with the ease of people who had time, resources, and no real emergencies waiting for them. It all looked smooth on the surface. Perfect, even. But David recognized the truth. Everyone was performing. That was the unspoken rule of his world. Keep up appearances, even when holding your breath. His phone buzzed. Another message from an investor, another reminder from an advisor, another question from a board member who loved numbers but knew very little about people. He muted his phone. Just for now. The SUV rolled to a stop in front of the hospital. Modern glass walls reflected the rising sunlight, making the building look sharp and clean. Strangers moved through the entrance, patients, nurses, visitors, each carrying a story, each carrying something they didn't say out loud. David stepped out and straightened his jacket. Hospitals always made him feel small, not in a humiliating way, but in a deeply human way. Inside these walls, wealth meant nothing. Everyone was equal in uncertainty. He checked in at the front desk, then sat in the waiting area. His leg bounced slightly. He tried to focus on the dull buzz of conversations around him, but his mind raced ahead. What if the results weren't good? What if something was wrong? What if this was one more thing he couldn't control? He inhaled slowly, reminding himself that today was just routine, a simple checkup, nothing more. A nurse in navy scrubs approached. "Mr. Harrington, exam room 3, please. Your doctor will be with you shortly." He followed her down the hallway. The click of her shoes echoed, rhythmic and sharp, grounding him as he walked. The nurse gestured toward the open door. "Right in here." David stepped inside. The room was bright and cold in a way only medical rooms could be. He sat on the exam table and tried to relax his shoulders. His gaze drifted toward the sink, the cabinet, the instrument tray. Everything looked clean, functional, indifferent. He rubbed his palms together and waited. He thought about the notebook on his dresser, about the woman who inspired it, about the way he had held on to that sentence for years without fully admitting why. He had never truly moved on. Not from Pamela. Not from the version of himself he was when he loved her. Not from the dreams he buried in the name of responsibility. He took a slow breath and glanced at the clock. She should be here any minute, he told himself, but he didn't know who she was. He knew the appointment had been assigned randomly. He knew he didn't request a specific doctor. He knew nothing unusual should happen. But something inside him shifted. A faint unease mixed with a strange anticipation. He brushed it off. Just nerves, he reasoned. Just the tension of a man who didn't like hospitals. The door handle turned. He straightened instinctively. But nothing could prepare him for who walked in next. It wasn't just a doctor. It wasn't just a surprise. It was his past. His unanswered questions. His unfinished heartache. Wrapped in a white coat, carrying a clipboard. Pamela. In that instant, everything he'd been holding together with quiet discipline began to tremble. And without warning, the day that was meant to confirm his physical health became the day that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his life. Long before Pamela stepped into exam room 3 wearing a white coat, and long before David felt his entire world shift beneath him, there had been a very different version of them. A softer one. A version built from accidental encounters, awkward charm, honest laughter, and a connection neither of them saw coming. It began on a humid summer afternoon during a community health event near Howard University Hospital. Tables overflowed with pamphlets, volunteers hurried around trying to give structure to a chaotic event, and parents juggled restless children who had no interest in waiting their turn. Pamela stood near a folding table organizing blood pressure kits, determined to keep her temper low and her efficiency high. But the kits had other plans. A stack she had just arranged slid forward and toppled onto her feet. She closed her eyes for a moment. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. A voice behind her responded, "Need help?" She turned to find a man standing there holding a clipboard more like a prop than something he actually understood. His outfit didn't match the environment, polished shoes, a tailored jacket, and the kind of quiet confidence that hinted at a life far different from everyone else working the booths. He didn't look like someone who knew how to fix a collapsing supply table. "I'm fine," Pamela said, kneeling to gather the scattered equipment. "Just having a battle with medical supplies." He crouched beside her anyway. "I can help." She eyed his suit with suspicion. "Do you really know what you're doing?" He glanced at a blood pressure cuff, as if it were an alien artifact. "Possibly." She raised an eyebrow. "Possibly? I mean, how complicated can it be?" Pamela held up one piece. "This is upside down." He stared at it. "Oh, well, that happens." Despite her irritation, Pamela let out a small laugh. "You're not very convincing." He shrugged. "I'm still committed to the attempt." There was something genuine about him, honest in his awkwardness, but earnest in his desire to help. Most people try to impress her. He didn't. And for reasons she couldn't explain, it softened her. They stood after gathering the last of the fallen supplies. He extended his hand. "I'm David. Pamela," she replied, shaking it. He nodded once, as though memorizing the name. "Nice to meet you. Even under tragic equipment circumstances." She snorted. "You caused half of them. True, but I'm willing to redeem myself." Pamela rolled her eyes. "We'll see." Their paths crossed again later that day, then again the following week, and again after that, not in big ways, small ones, passing each other in corridors, sharing a moment of tired humor during long shifts, catching each other's eyes across crowded rooms at events neither of them particularly wanted to attend. There was nothing forced about it. Their connection unfolded quietly, naturally, like two people unconsciously stepping into the same rhythm. One evening, Pamela sat hunched over a pile of textbooks at the hospital cafe. Her residency workload was crushing. Coffee cups surrounded her like trophies from battles she barely survived. David approached cautiously. "You look busy," he said. "Busy is a polite word," she muttered. "My brain feels like mashed potatoes." He took a seat across from her, uninvited but not unwelcome. "Can I help?" She looked up slowly. "Do you even know the difference between systolic and diastolic pressure?" He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it with a sheepish shrug. "Would it impress you if I lied?" "No." "Then no. I don't." Her laughter pulled something warm from deep inside him. He leaned back. "I can still help." "How?" she challenged. "I can buy you real food instead of whatever those vending machine cookies are pretending to be." She paused. "What kind of food?" "Something that doesn't require a foil wrapper." Pamela stared at him for a moment before finally giving in. "Fine. One meal." "One?" he repeated. "We'll see." That night, after they finished eating, neither wanted to leave. They talked for hours about childhood memories, family pressures, career dreams, and fears they usually kept hidden. Pamela learned David carried more responsibility than he ever admitted. David learned Pamela had the kind of drive most people only dreamed about. Neither of them said it aloud, but something shifted that night. The next shift, he appeared with coffee. "Medium roast with oat milk," he announced. "Neutral enough to not ruin your day." She squinted at him. "You guessed?" I panicked at the register. She smiled, despite herself. And just like that, bringing her coffee became his quiet ritual. Weeks passed. Their conversations deepened. Their smiles lingered longer. Their accidental hand brushes became moments they both replayed in their minds. One weekend, after volunteering at another community outreach event, Pamela asked him, "Have you ever had real soul food?" David's brow lifted. "Is the stuff on shows not real?" She looked at him like he had committed a crime. "Absolutely not. Come on." She led him to a small restaurant tucked between two storefronts. There were no fancy signs, just delicious smells, loud laughter from aunties working in the kitchen, and walls covered in framed photos. Pamela ordered for him. When he took the first bite of seasoned chicken, his eyes widened. "Why is this so good?" Pamela tried not to laugh. "Welcome to actual flavor." He pointed at the greens. "These are spicy." "No, they have personality. My tongue disagrees." "You'll live." They left the restaurant full and laughing. As they walked back to his car, evening air warm around them, David glanced at her with a look she felt all the way down to her ribs. He liked her. He wasn't subtle about it. And Pamela liked him back. Their relationship didn't explode into existence. It unfolded gradually. Text messages that stretched into conversations, late-night calls, quiet moments that didn't need explaining. But love, even with good intentions, doesn't always survive pressure. As Pamela's residency intensified, exhaustion took over her days. She slept in short fragments, ate meals standing up, and carried emotional weight with every shift. David's world tightened around him too. Family expectations, business obligations, responsibilities he couldn't walk away from. They began missing moments, then missing each other. They tried to fix it, tried to understand it, tried to stretch themselves into a space that wouldn't tear. One night, Pamela sat on her small couch, shoulders slumped. David stood in her living room, hands in his pockets, eyes tired. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her voice trembling from months of strain. His breath left him. "Pamela, I want to," she said. "I love spending time with you. But I need someone who's here, not someone who shows up exhausted from a world I don't fit into." David stepped closer. "I'm trying." "I know." She swallowed hard. "But trying isn't the same as being present." He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply nodded, defeated, confused, hurting. Neither said the word goodbye, but it hung between them anyway. When she walked him to the door, the silence felt final. She closed it gently behind him, rested her forehead against the wood, and let the tears come. What she didn't know at that moment, what she couldn't possibly know, was that she was already pregnant. She found out weeks later. Fear wrapped around her heartbeat. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to hear him say her name the way he used to, but something inside her whispered caution. She feared his family's influence. She feared losing control of her own life. She feared becoming a problem in his world. She feared giving him news when he barely had the space to carry himself. So she made the hardest decision she ever faced. She would raise her child alone. Zara was born months later, tiny, bright-eyed, beautiful, and Pamela held her with a love that erased every fear and replaced it with purpose. She built a world around her daughter, a world filled with work, sacrifice, and unconditional devotion. She told herself David didn't need to know. She told herself they had parted ways for a reason. She told herself she had chosen the path that made sense. And for a long time, she believed it. But standing outside exam room 3 years later, older, stronger, different, those old decisions trembled. Pamela closed her hand around her clipboard, steadied herself, and turned the doorknob. She stepped inside with the calm confidence of a doctor. David looked up. The moment their eyes met, everything she had buried rose to the surface. Her breath caught. His body froze. Time didn't rewind. It collided. The air in exam room 3 felt colder than it should have. Not the kind of cold that came from the vent above the sink, but the kind that slipped into a person's chest when the past and present collided without warning. David sat on the paper-covered exam table, stiff as a statue, his hands gripping the edge like he needed something solid to hold on to. He had walked into the hospital expecting routine tests, a quick vitals check, maybe a lecture about stress. Nothing more, nothing complicated. But when the door opened, when she stepped inside, everything he thought was stable inside him shifted. Pamela stood in the doorway wearing a white coat, a clipboard tucked against her chest, her curls pulled back the way she always did when she wanted to stay composed. For a moment, she didn't look up. She scanned the file like it was any other patient. Then she lifted her eyes. Their worlds collided in absolute silence. Her breath caught first, short, sharp, barely audible. His heart reacted second, one violent thump that didn't feel normal. "David," she whispered, her voice cracking in disbelief. He swallowed, unable to look away. "Pamela." That was all either of them managed for several seconds. Time didn't just slow, it stepped aside, letting all the unspoken memories squeeze into the space between them. Pamela finally forced air into her lungs. I didn't know this appointment was yours. I didn't know you worked here," he replied, voice gentler than he intended. She nodded once, shifting her weight to steady herself. "Finished residency last year. Took a full-time position. I thought about mentioning it to you, but we weren't speaking." He didn't challenge that. He didn't have the right to. She stepped farther inside, letting the door close behind her. The sound echoed too loudly in the small room. "All right," she said professionally, clearing her throat. "Let's begin your exam." He almost laughed from shock. "Now?" "Yes," she said firmly, though her voice trembled at the edges. "You're here for a checkup, and I'm the attending on duty. Let's just do the exam." David nodded, though his mind felt scattered. He tried to breathe, tried to settle the tightness in his chest, tried not to look at her like he had spent 4 years imagining this exact moment. Pamela approached him with slow, controlled steps. She set her clipboard down on the counter and reached for her stethoscope. Her fingers shook just slightly. "Lift your shirt," she said, eyes avoiding his. He did. His hands weren't steady either. Pamela placed the stethoscope on his chest. The cold metal pressed against his skin, but her proximity was the real jolt. Her scent, her presence, her composure that always softened his edges. All of it hit him at once. "Deep breath," she instructed. He inhaled, but the breath wavered halfway in. She moved the stethoscope to the other side. Another deep breath. He looked at her instead of the wall. Her eyes flicked up. "David, I'm breathing," he said quietly. "Just trying to remember how." She almost smiled. Almost. Her lips twitched, but didn't follow through. "You need to stare at the wall, not at me," she murmured. "I tried that," he whispered. It didn't help. Pamela stepped back quickly, breaking the moment. She clicked the stethoscope off and forced herself into a clinical tone. "Your heart rate is elevated." He pressed a hand to his chest. "I wonder why." "Please don't joke," she said softly. "I need to get through this." He nodded again, calmer this time. "Okay, I'm here. Do what you need to." She reached for the blood pressure cuff and wrapped it around his arm, tightening it with careful precision. Their hands brushed, sending a tiny shock through both of them. Pamela pretended not to feel it. David couldn't pretend anything. The cuff inflated. Her voice softened. "You seem stressed." "You think?" he whispered. "I'm sitting in front of the woman I never should have let go." Pamela froze, just 1 second, but it was enough for the cuff to slip slightly. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't say things like that. Not right now." He swallowed hard and nodded. "All right." She adjusted the cuff again, avoiding his eyes. The monitor beeped gently, filling the silence. While it ran, Pamela's thoughts spiraled in quiet, controlled chaos. She had imagined seeing David again hundreds of times, at the grocery store, walking across a street, at a coffee shop. She never imagined the reunion would happen like this. In a cold exam room, with her heart racing faster than his. The monitor beeped again, signaling the reading was complete. "Your pressure is higher than usual," she murmured. "Because I'm sitting here with you," he replied. Pamela exhaled slowly, setting the cuff aside. "David, please. I need to stay focused, and you're making this difficult." He nodded. "I'll behave." She picked up her clipboard, scribbling notes with a trembling hand. "Next, I'll check your pulse manually." She stepped closer, taking his wrist gently in her hand. His pulse jumped under her fingers. She felt it, but didn't comment. "Try to relax," she whispered. "I haven't relaxed since you walked in," he whispered back. She ignored that, or pretended to. But then, the doorknob rattled. Pamela's head snapped up instantly. "Oh, hold on." The door cracked open. A small face poked through the gap. "Mommy." Time shattered. Every piece of David's emotional armor cracked in one single heartbeat. Pamela's eyes went wide with shock, horror, panic. Zara stepped fully inside before Pamela could stop her, clutching her small toy stethoscope. "I forgot my thing," she said. "You said I could show you." Pamela nearly choked. "Zara, sweetie, you can't be in here." David stared, not at Pamela, at the little girl, at her eyes, his eyes. They were the same shape, the same deep brown, the same quiet, observant focus, the same spark. His breath left his body in one violent exhale. Pamela moved quickly, placing herself between them as if she could shield the truth with her own body. "Zara, baby, go wait outside. Mommy will be right there." But the child had already seen him. She looked at David with innocent curiosity. "Hi." David's vision blurred. He blinked rapidly, but it wasn't enough to steady him. He rose slowly from the exam table. Pamela panicked. "David, don't." He didn't touch Zara. He didn't move closer. He simply crouched down so he wouldn't tower over her. "Hi," he whispered. Zara studied him like children do, with no filter, no hesitation, no fear. "You have eyes like mine," she said proudly. Pamela froze completely. David's chest tightened, and a breath escaped him that sounded nothing like the man he used to be. Pamela grabbed Zara gently by the shoulders. "Sweetheart, you need to wait in the hallway. Now." Zara pouted. "But I wanted to show—" "Now," Pamela whispered, voice shaking. Zara stepped back, dragging her toy stethoscope across the floor, and slipped out of the room. The door closed. Silence returned. But it wasn't empty. It was full, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. David stood slowly, eyes locked on Pamela, pain etched deeply across his face. "She looks like me," he said quietly. Pamela's throat worked hard as she swallowed. Her fingers trembled against the clipboard. "David," she whispered. "Just answer me," he said, voice soft, breaking in the middle. Is Zara my daughter?" Pamela's eyes filled, not with tears of regret, but with the weight of 4 years of secrets pressing against her chest. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence was the truth. Pamela didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until her lungs began to burn. She exhaled in a shaky rush, gripping the counter for support. The sterile exam room felt too bright, too small, too close to everything she had spent years trying to keep separated. David didn't move at first. He stood rooted in place, eyes fixed on the door where Zara had disappeared, as if he was still seeing that small face peeking through the crack. His voice came out low, unsteady. "Pamela, tell me the truth." Her fingers pressed into the counter until her knuckles paled. "David, is she mine?" Those 3 words carried no accusation, no sharpness, no threat. Just pure, raw disbelief. And something else underneath, something soft, but broken. Pamela closed her eyes. For 4 long years she rehearsed every possible version of this conversation. The version where she argued, the version where she apologized, the version where she ran away. But she never imagined the version where David looked at her with this much pain and tenderness at the same time. When she opened her eyes, she finally nodded. Just once. It was enough. David staggered back slightly, like the truth hit him physically. His hand lifted to his chest, pressing over the thundering heartbeat that Pamela had just listened to minutes ago. "God," he whispered. "Pamela." She stepped toward him instinctively but stopped halfway, unsure if touching him would anchor him or push him deeper into shock. "I didn't hide her to hurt you," she said softly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time in years she saw something in his eyes she thought he'd lost. Emotion, not controlled, not polished, not restrained. Real. "Why?" he whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" Pamela's throat tightened. "Because we were already falling apart. You were drowning in work, Your family was pulling you in every direction and I was barely holding myself together. I didn't want Zara to grow up as an obligation on your calendar. That's not fair, he said. Not angry, just wounded. You know I would have shown up. Would you? She asked quietly. Not bitter, not attacking, just honest. Back then you could barely show up for yourself. He inhaled sharply, a truth he didn't want to admit but couldn't deny. Pamela continued, voice trembling. I was scared that telling you would open a door I couldn't close, that your world would swallow mine, that your family would try to control everything. I didn't want to fight for her safety. I just wanted to raise her in peace. David dragged a hand down his face, his shoulders curling inward. I missed everything. Pamela blinked quickly, stopping tears from forming. I know. You didn't send a message, an email, anything. I wrote drafts, she whispered, staring at the floor. I deleted all of them. Another silence filled the room, heavy but necessary. Finally, David lifted his head, eyes damp but focused. Does she know anything about me? No, Pamela murmured. Just that she has me, that our family looks different, that she is loved. David nodded slowly, absorbing each word like a bruise. Then he said something that made Pamela's heart stumble. I'm not angry at you. She looked up sharply. You're not? He shook his head. No, I'm hurt. I'm overwhelmed. I'm shocked beyond belief. But I'm not angry. Anger wouldn't change anything. I wish I had known. I wish I hadn't missed her first steps or her first words or her first day of daycare. Pamela's lips trembled as she whispered. Her first word was pretzel. She loves snacks too much. A faint, broken laugh escaped David. Of course she does. He stepped a little closer. Pamela, I need to see her again. Not as a stranger in a hallway, not by accident. I need to meet her properly. I know, she said. Let me be in her life, he said, voice deepening with quiet conviction. Whatever pace you choose, whatever boundaries you set, I'm here. I'm ready to do the work. Those words, ready to do the work, hit Pamela in the softest part of her chest. That wasn't a phrase the old David would have used. The old David avoided emotional labor like it was optional. This version of him felt steadier, more humble, more grown. Pamela exhaled, shaky but sincere. We'll take it slow, she's still just 4. Introducing someone new, even gently, needs time. David nodded, accepting the pace instead of fighting for control. Slow is fine. Slow is good. For the first time since Zara stepped into the room, Pamela felt a sliver of calm thread through the tension. Until a faint knock sounded on the door. Both turned. Pamela opened it slightly and peeked into the hallway. Zara sat neatly in the little chair, kicking her feet, humming and playing with her toy stethoscope, the same toy she proudly waved earlier. Her eyes lit up when she saw Pamela. Mommy, can I say bye now? Pamela hesitated. Hard. David stepped forward, keeping his voice low. Only if you're comfortable with it. Pamela looked at him, the steadiness in his eyes, the gentleness in his posture, the care he showed by not pushing, and something inside her finally uncoiled a bit. She opened the door wider. Okay, baby. Just for a moment. Zara hopped off the chair and padded into the room with tiny, confident steps. She stopped in front of David, her curls bouncing as she tilted her head. Hi again, she said matter-of-factly. David crouched down, matching her height. Hi, Zara. I fixed my stethoscope, she announced proudly, holding it up like a trophy. That's amazing, he said, smiling. You're very smart. She nodded. Mommy says I'm too smart sometimes. Pamela groaned into her hand. Zara completely ignored her. David's smile widened, eyes softening at the edges. Can I tell you a secret? Zara's eyes sparkled. Yes. Your stethoscope is way cooler than the real ones, he whispered. Zara gasped, delighted, and leaned closer. I know. David laughed again, soft, genuine, no walls. Pamela watched them, something warm growing in her chest that she couldn't hide even if she tried. After a moment, Zara asked, Are you Mommy's friend? The question punched the air straight out of Pamela's lungs. David didn't look at Pamela for guidance. He didn't rush. He simply answered with a kindness that felt safe. I'd really like to be, he said. Zara grinned. Okay. She waved her tiny hand. Bye, Mr. David. He placed his hand over his heart, not dramatically, just instinctively. Bye, sweetheart. Zara skipped out of the room, humming. Pamela lingered in the doorway, struggling to steady herself. The moment felt too real, too close to something she wasn't sure she was ready for. David stood slowly, eyes still on the hallway where Zara had disappeared. She's incredible, he whispered. Pamela nodded. She is. He turned toward her. Thank you for letting me have that moment. Pamela held the door handle tightly. You handled it well. Better than I expected. I'm trying, he said. I won't get everything right, but I won't run from it either. Pamela didn't respond immediately. Her heart was working overtime trying to reconcile two realities, the man she once loved and the man standing in front of her now, older, calmer, more intentional. Finally, she spoke in a quiet voice. We'll talk again soon, I promise. David nodded. Whenever you're ready. Pamela stepped into the hallway, but David didn't move. He stayed in the room for a moment longer, bracing himself against the exam table, letting the emotional weight settle. He had walked into the hospital for a checkup. He walked out knowing he was a father. Nothing in his life had ever changed faster. Nothing had ever mattered more. Pamela stood just outside the exam room for a moment, one hand pressed flat against the wall as she tried to calm her breathing. The hallway moved around her, nurses rolling charts, patients checking in, overhead announcements humming, but she felt suspended in her own private storm. Zara sat with her toy stethoscope, swinging her feet and humming, blissfully unaware of the emotional earthquake she had just triggered inside that small room. Pamela inhaled deeply, then exhaled. She needed to talk to David, alone, without Zara's bright curiosity piercing old wounds and new truths. She turned back to the door, opened it, and stepped inside once more. David stood exactly where she'd left him, back partially to her, both hands on the edge of the exam table, head bowed as if he needed the support to stay upright. He didn't turn immediately when she re-entered, but his posture shifted enough to tell her he sensed her presence. David, she said gently. He straightened slowly, exhaling through his nose as he tried to regain composure. When he finally faced her, his expression held everything he had been trying to swallow: shock, grief over lost years, and something much deeper: determination. We need to talk, Pamela said quietly. David nodded, gesturing to one of the chairs. Sit with me? Pamela hesitated, but she agreed. She pulled out a chair for herself while he settled into the other, leaning forward with his hands clasped. For a lingering moment, neither spoke. The silence between them didn't feel hostile, just heavy, full of truths that had waited 4 years for a voice. Pamela finally broke it. I know you have questions, she said, and you deserve answers, real ones. David nodded once. Start wherever you need to. Pamela looked down at her hands. I found out I was pregnant a few weeks after we broke up. At first, I didn't believe it. I kept thinking it was stress or exhaustion. But when I confirmed it, I just froze. David's brows lowered, not in judgment, but in empathy. You were alone. I was overwhelmed, she corrected softly. I was working long shifts, barely sleeping, barely eating. I was trying to become a doctor and trying not to collapse under the pressure. And then suddenly, I was a mother too. David swallowed. Why didn't you call me? Pamela's breath hitched. I wanted to. Then, why didn't you? She lifted her eyes and met his. Because I didn't trust us at the time. That hurt him, but not in a way that pushed him to defensiveness. He simply waited. You were drowning in your world, she whispered. Your family had expectations. Your investors watched your every move, and I barely saw you anymore. We were slipping apart so quietly that the breakup didn't even feel like a moment. It felt like erosion. David lowered his gaze. I know. Back then, you didn't have space for yourself, let alone a child. And I didn't want to force us into something when we were already breaking. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. You didn't force anything. You would have told me the truth. I needed to know. Pamela shook her head. I was scared, David. I was scared your family would find out and try to take control. I was scared they'd treat Zara like a responsibility instead of a person. They would have seen her as a statement, not a child. And I was scared of fighting them. Fighting you, fighting everyone. David didn't deny it. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't pretend his world was gentle. He simply said, you protected her. Pamela blinked, surprised by the softness of the statement. You're not angry? David leaned back, resting his elbows on his knees. I can't be angry at a decision you made in fear. I can't be angry at you for surviving. I can't be angry at you for raising her the best way you knew how. Pamela's lips trembled. I didn't want her to feel like an outsider. She won't, he said firmly. Not with me. She studied him with cautious eyes. David, this isn't a temporary moment. Being in her life means showing up even when it's uncomfortable, even when your family pushes back, even when your schedule rebels, even when things get messy. I know. No, she insisted. You don't. Not yet. Zara isn't some checkbox you can complete or a project you can fix with money. She's a child with real feelings, real needs, real routines. If you come in and then disappear because it gets hard, that won't happen, he said, voice deepening. You say that now, and I'll say it tomorrow, he interrupted gently. And the day after. Pamela. I lost 4 years. I'm not losing a single day more. Pamela closed her eyes, letting his words settle. The man in front of her wasn't the version she'd left years ago. That man loved her the way busy people love, deeply, but inconsistently. This man seemed anchored, slower, more intentional. She didn't know when that shift happened. Maybe life did it to him. Maybe regret did. Maybe simply missing something real forced him to see the world differently. She opened her eyes again. We need boundaries. For her sake, I agree. You can't rush this. I won't. And you can't expect her to understand everything immediately. I don't. Pamela's voice softened. She's bright, but she's still just 4. She'll get attached quickly. You need to be steady. David nodded. I will be. Pamela hesitated again, studying the sincerity in his eyes. So, what do you want right now? He didn't hesitate. I want to be her father, he said. Not in title, in presence, in actions, in consistency. Pamela's breath caught. I want to earn her trust, he continued softly. I want to show up for her routines. I want to support her without disrupting her world. And I want to do this with you, not against you. Pamela swallowed hard. What about your family? David's jaw tensed. That's my problem. Not yours, not hers. You know they won't leave this alone, she whispered. I won't let them take control of anything involving her. He said it with a conviction that made Pamela's chest ache with a mix of fear and hope. After a long pause, she finally said, Okay. David's shoulders relaxed. Okay. Yes, she said. We'll start slow. You can see her again this week, but just small steps at first. A soft, relieved smile formed on David's face. Thank you. Before Pamela could respond, a small knock tapped at the door again. Mommy, Zara's tiny voice called. Are you done helping the man? Pamela turned, her expression softening instantly. Just a second, baby. David looked toward the door, emotion flickering across his face again. Can she come in for one more moment? Pamela hesitated, then nodded. Just a short one. She opened the door wider. Zara slipped in, holding her toy stethoscope with both hands. She waddled up to David, stopping in front of him. Mommy said you leave soon, she said matter-of-factly. David knelt to meet her eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Zara tilted her head. Okay. So, bye again. David's smile warmed. Goodbye, Zara. She reached out suddenly and tapped his shoulder with her toy stethoscope. Your heart is loud. Pamela nearly choked. David laughed under his breath. Yeah, he said softly. It is today. Zara nodded wisely, the way only children think they can. Mommy says hearts talk. Maybe yours is saying something important. Pamela froze. David's gaze lifted slowly to hers, a quiet knowing passing between them. Then Zara stepped back. Come again, okay? David swallowed, voice steady. I will. Zara beamed. Pamela guided her out into the hallway again. Say good night, sweetheart. Good night, Mr. David. He placed a hand against his chest again. Good night, Zara. Zara skipped away. Pamela lingered in the doorway one last time. David's voice lowered. We'll talk soon? Yes, she said. We have a lot to figure out. He nodded. Whatever you need. Whatever she needs. I'm here. Pamela didn't smile, but something in her expression softened just enough to tell him this wasn't the end of a conversation. It was the beginning of everything they had avoided for years. Pamela left the room. David stayed behind for a full minute, quietly absorbing the new reality pressing against his ribs, not suffocating him, but reshaping him. He wasn't leaving alone anymore. He was leaving as a father. A father who had lost time. A father who wasn't losing another second. A father ready to fight for more than wealth or image. He walked out of the room with a new heartbeat, a new purpose, and the quiet beginning of a new life he never expected to have. David stood on the sidewalk outside the hospital longer than he realized. The late afternoon air had cooled, brushing lightly across his face, grounding him after the emotional earthquake that shook him inside the exam room. Cars rolled past, people moved in and out of the building, but his world had narrowed to a single truth. He had a daughter, and she had just tapped his chest with a toy stethoscope, like she owned the whole world. He exhaled slowly, fingers tightening around the strap of his messenger bag. Everything in him felt unsettled yet alert, as though a part of him that had been asleep for years suddenly woke up with a purpose it didn't know it was missing. He checked his phone. No messages from his mother. No reminders from work. Just silence. A silence that felt both terrifying and strangely liberating. He stayed near the hospital entrance because Pamela had said she and Zara were finishing up paperwork. He didn't want to seem intrusive, but he couldn't walk away. Not yet. Not when the opportunity to see Zara again, properly without shock blurring the moment, was this close. So he waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. Every step that approached made his heart jump in anticipation, only to settle again when it wasn't them. Then, as the automatic doors slid open one more time, he saw them. Pamela stepped out wearing her light jacket, adjusting the strap of her bag. Her expression was composed, that quiet professional calm she'd mastered, but her eyes held an alert softness whenever they flicked toward her daughter. Zara came hopping behind her, stethoscope around her neck like a badge of honor, a small drawing clutched in her hand. The moment Zara spotted him, she lit up like someone turned on a switch inside her. "There he is," she shouted, pointing dramatically. Pamela's eyes widened slightly at her enthusiasm, but Zara was already trotting toward him with tiny, confident steps. David felt something melt inside his chest. "Hi, Mr. David," she said breathlessly. He knelt so he could meet her at eye level, learning quickly that children responded best when adults came down to their world. "Hey, Zara. I missed you. You did?" Her curls bounced as she tilted her head. "I did," he said softly. "Very much." She grinned and held up the paper in her hand. "I made this." He unfolded it carefully. A stick figure with curly hair. A taller stick figure with round glasses. 2 hearts between them. "This is you," she pointed proudly at the small figure. "And this is Mommy. And this," she tapped the taller figure shyly, "is you." Pamela inhaled sharply behind her. David swallowed. "It's beautiful. I'm honored." Zara beamed. "Mommy says good drawings come from good feelings." "She's right," he said gently. Pamela joined them, clearing her throat quietly. "Zara, sweetheart, we need to head home and get dinner started." Zara pouted dramatically. "But I'm not hungry yet." Pamela raised a brow. "You always say that until we get home, and then you want everything in the fridge." Zara giggled. David stood slowly searching Pamela's face. She was guarded, but not closed. Hesitant, but not resistant. A woman walking a tightrope between fear and something dangerously close to hope. "I don't want to interrupt your evening," David said softly. "I just wanted to see her again before you left." Pamela nodded, her voice calm. "We appreciate that." Zara tugged Pamela's arm. "Mommy." "Yes, baby? Can he come eat with us?" Pamela nearly choked. "Zara." "What?" Zara blinked innocently. "He's hungry. Grown-ups get hungry too." David had to suppress a smile. He didn't want Pamela to feel pressured. He raised his hands slightly in a gentle gesture. "Only if your mom is comfortable. I don't want to disrupt your routine." Zara looked up at her mother with full, unfiltered hope. Pamela exhaled slowly. She wasn't impulsive, he knew that. She made decisions carefully, especially when they involved Zara's emotional well-being. But she also wasn't blind. She saw how Zara reacted to him, open, excited, unafraid. She saw how he responded to her daughter, gentle, steady, patient. And she knew the next step had to be supervised, gradual, safe. After a long moment, Pamela nodded once. "Okay, but something simple, and close by." Zara twirled in triumph. David's smile was small but sincere. "Thank you, really. There's a small diner a few blocks from here," Pamela said, adjusting her bag. "It's nothing fancy." "That's perfect," he replied. They began walking, Pamela holding Zara's hand and David walking a respectful half-step behind, letting them lead. The city buzzed around them, buses passing, street vendors calling out orders, the warmth of early evening settling over southeast D.C. Zara looked back at him. "Do you walk slow or fast?" David chuckled. "Whichever pace you like." She nodded knowingly. "Slow is better." "Mommy says slow helps you think." Pamela's cheeks flushed. "Zara." "What?" Zara blinked. "You say that when you're cooking." David laughed softly. "It's good advice." They reached the crosswalk. Zara squeezed Pamela's hand and reached her free one behind her, toward David. Pamela stiffened slightly. David hesitated for a moment, unsure. But Zara wiggled her hand impatiently. "Mr. David, come on." He gently took her small hand, careful not to grip too firmly. The light changed, and the three crossed together, a picture of something unexpected, something delicate, something that felt more like a beginning than any of them were ready to admit. The diner was small and homey, with warm lighting and the smell of fries and pancakes drifting through the air. It wasn't the kind of place David usually visited. He was used to quiet, polished restaurants uptown, but something about this little spot felt comforting. Human. They slid into a booth, Pamela and Zara on one side, David across from them. Zara immediately placed her stethoscope on the table. "This is for emergencies," she announced. David smiled. "Good. We need someone responsible here." Pamela rolled her eyes, trying not to smile. A waitress approached and took their orders. Grilled cheese for Zara, salmon salad for Pamela, a simple turkey sandwich for David. When she walked away, an awkward silence settled for a moment, until Zara tapped the table. "Mr. David." "Yes? Do you like Mommy?" Pamela nearly dropped her water. David looked at Zara calmly. "Yes. I always have." Pamela stared at him, not angry, not flustered, just searching. Zara nodded. "Good. Mommy is nice, and sometimes tired, but she's still nice." "Thank you," he said softly, glancing at Pamela. "Your mom is amazing." Pamela looked down, pretending to organize napkins. Zara leaned back, satisfied. "I like when you talk." "Why?" David asked gently. "Because you listen too," she said simply. Pamela froze. Kids didn't lie. Kids didn't flatter. Kids didn't hide truths. They observed. They felt. They spoke. And right now, Zara saw something in him Pamela wasn't sure she was ready to acknowledge. Their food arrived, giving Pamela a moment to breathe. As they ate, the conversation softened. Zara told him about daycare, about her favorite teacher, about the lady on the bus who always gave her stickers. David listened, really listened, smiling, asking questions, letting her take up space. Pamela watched quietly, letting her fork rest on her plate. He wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't overcompensating. He was simply present, something he hadn't been able to give her years ago. When Zara dipped her grilled cheese halfway into her water cup, Pamela groaned. "Zara Marie." "It's an experiment," Zara whispered loudly. David chuckled again. "A bold one." Pamela shot him a look. "Do not encourage her." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said. But the warmth in his tone made her heart flutter in a way she didn't ask for. After a few more minutes, Zara started to yawn dramatically, leaning against Pamela's arm. "Somebody's getting tired," Pamela murmured. Zara shook her head. "No, I'm just resting my eyes." David grinned. "That's the universal code for, I need my bed." Pamela lifted Zara into her lap so she wouldn't slide under the table. David watched the way she held her daughter, easy, practiced, loving. His chest tightened with something between admiration and ache. "Thank you for inviting me," he said softly. "Both of you." Pamela met his eyes for a brief, quiet second. It was the right step. Zara stirred, half asleep. "Mr. David, come again." His voice softened to a whisper. "I will, sweetheart. I promise." Pamela swallowed, steadying her breathing. This was the first real step towards something none of them had words for yet. A possibility, a path, a bridge being rebuilt piece by piece. And for the first time since she discovered she was pregnant 4 years ago, Pamela didn't feel like she was walking alone. The diner's soft lighting warmed the corners of the room, creating a gentle glow around the booth where the three of them sat. Zara, now leaning fully into Pamela's side, blinked slowly with a kind of sleepiness only a child could display, fighting it bravely while losing the battle entirely. David watched her with a quiet amazement. He never imagined witnessing something so simple, a child drifting off after dinner, could stir something this deep inside him. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was soft, steady, and grounding. Pamela gently brushed a curl away from Zara's forehead. "She's really out," she whispered. David nodded, lowering his voice instinctively. "She had a big day." Pamela let out a small laugh, tired but genuine, bigger than she expected. Their eyes met across the table. Neither looked away. For a moment the background noise of clinking plates and quiet conversations faded. The space between them felt familiar, in a way that made both of them sit a little straighter, unsure if leaning into it was wise or dangerous. Pamela finally cleared her throat. "We should get going soon. I need to get her home, get her cleaned up and into bed." David nodded. "Of course." But she didn't stand up yet. She stayed seated, her hand resting lightly on Zara's back. David noticed, and he took a slow breath before speaking again. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Pamela asked, cautious but curious. "For dinner. For letting me share this hour with the two of you. For trusting me even a little." His voice remained steady, but the honesty in it wasn't something he could hide. "You didn't have to say yes. You didn't have to let me sit across from her like this. I know none of this is simple." Pamela looked down at the table, tracing a finger across a water ring left by her glass. "It isn't simple," she agreed, "but it's necessary. And it felt right." Her own words surprised her. David's posture softened. "It felt right to me too." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gently adjusted Zara in her lap, making sure the little girl's legs were tucked comfortably. The waitress returned with the check, and when Pamela reached for her purse, David shook his head. "I've got it." Pamela frowned lightly. "David." "Pamela," he said softly, "please. It's the least I can do." She hesitated, studying him. The old David might have insisted as a matter of pride or image or reflex. This version wasn't trying to show dominance or capability. He was offering something simple, almost humble. She let him take it. "Thank you," she said. He smiled gently. "You're welcome." After settling the bill, they slid out of the booth. Pamela lifted Zara with a practiced ease, and the little girl's head fell naturally against her mother's shoulder. David followed them toward the exit, walking beside them rather than behind, not assuming a place, not forcing one, simply matching their pace. The night air hit them as they stepped outside, cooler than before but still carrying the warmth of early summer. Streetlights cast a soft glow over the sidewalk as distant car horns hummed through the city. Pamela shifted Zara slightly and sighed. "She's getting heavier." David stepped closer. "Let me help you carry her." Pamela blinked. "Are you sure?" "Positive." She hesitated for several seconds, long enough for the moment to stretch, before finally nodding. "Okay. But be careful. She's a deep sleeper, but she startles easily." "I'll be careful," he promised. He slid his arms under Zara, lifting her gently. Her head naturally rested against his shoulder, her tiny hand curling into the fabric of his shirt as if choosing him on instinct. Pamela felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear, not regret. Something harder to define. They walked slowly toward the parking lot behind the diner. Pamela watched him carry her daughter with a steadiness she didn't expect. He wasn't awkward. He wasn't stiff. He wasn't unsure. He looked like a father. Once they reached her car, David carefully helped place Zara into her booster seat. Pamela fastened the straps, brushing the child's cheek with the back of her hand. David stepped back, giving her space. "She's amazing," he said quietly. Pamela shut the door softly. "She is." There was a pause, thick with words neither knew how to say, heavy with everything that had changed in a single day. "You're a great mother," David said suddenly. Pamela froze. "What?" "You heard me." His voice was steady. "I've only seen a glimpse of your world today, but it's obvious. She's loved, she's confident, she's safe. That doesn't happen by accident." Pamela exhaled slowly, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. "It's been hard," she admitted quietly. "There were times I didn't know if I was doing anything right." "Well," David said, "you've done something extraordinary. I hope you know that." She looked at him, really looked, and saw a softness she hadn't allowed herself to see earlier. "Thank you," she whispered. David nodded, shoving his hands into his pockets as if grounding himself. "Pamela, I'm not trying to rush anything. I know trust takes time, and I know I have a lot of work to do, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere." Pamela leaned against the car for support. "This is a lot, David, for both of us." "I know," he said, "but I'm willing to take it one day at a time. You set the pace, I'll follow it." She studied him again, the steadiness, the maturity, the humility he didn't have years ago. "I'm trying to protect her," she said. "And I'm trying to protect both of you," he replied quietly. A beat passed, then another, then another. Finally, Pamela exhaled. "Okay, let's see where this goes." A slow, relieved smile formed on David's face. "I'd like that." Pamela opened the driver's door, but before she got in, Zara stirred slightly in her sleep, mumbling, "Mr. David." David froze. Pamela looked back at him. "She likes you," she said softly. His breath caught. "I like her too." Pamela didn't respond, but she closed the door gently, allowing Zara to fall back into her quiet sleep. David stepped back as Pamela started the engine. She rolled down the window. "Text me tomorrow," she said. He nodded. "I will." She hesitated for a moment, the smallest fraction of one, and then said, "Good night, David." "Good night, Pamela." She drove off slowly, Zara's head bobbing softly in sleep. David stood there until the taillights disappeared down the street. There was a time when his nights ended with meetings, spreadsheets, unanswered messages, and a quiet sense of emotional emptiness. Tonight, his night ended with a child's drawing in his pocket, a promise forming in his heart, and the quiet awareness that life had just opened a door he didn't know he needed. David remained in the parking lot for several seconds after Pamela's taillights faded into the distance, his hands still tucked in his pockets, the cool evening air settling around him. It wasn't the kind of cold that pushed him away, it was the kind that sharpened clarity. He inhaled deeply. Zara's soft voice saying, "Mr. David." "Come again," echoed in his chest. He didn't rush to his car. He didn't take a call. He didn't even check his messages. He simply stood there, letting the reality of the night settle. A child he never knew existed had fallen asleep calling for him. A woman he once loved was beginning, cautiously, to let him step into the world she'd built alone. Everything had changed, and yet everything felt like it was finally aligning into place. He took one last look at the empty street before heading toward his car. That's when he heard footsteps. Not rushed, not hesitant, measured, intentional. He turned. His mother stood near the entrance of the parking lot, her arms folded elegantly, her expression unreadable in the glow of the streetlight. A chill rolled down David's spine, not from the temperature but from the weight of her presence. He hadn't seen her all day, but she wasn't a woman who needed an invitation to insert herself into a situation. "Mom," he said carefully, "what are you doing here?" She stepped closer, her heels clicking softly. Her expression was poised, the same polished composure she carried during fundraising galas and boardroom events. "I came to talk to you," she replied calmly. "Clearly, I arrived at the perfect time." David stiffened. "How long have you been here?" "Long enough." Those two words sent a shiver down his back. His mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten outright. She didn't need to. Her strength was subtle, quiet pressure that squeezed without leaving marks. She tilted her head slightly. "That little girl, the one calling you Mr. David." Her tone sharpened, barely noticeable, but enough to make him tense. David said nothing. "What a coincidence," she continued. "She looks remarkably familiar." He inhaled slowly. "Her name is Zara." "I see." A pause. "And how old is she? 4? 5? David didn't respond, but silence was an answer she was trained to read like a textbook. "So it's true," she said quietly. "You have a child." David's jaw flexed. "Mom, we're not doing this in the parking lot." She stepped closer. "We're absolutely doing this right here, David, because your life and our family's reputation is not something you get to rearrange without consequence." He took one step back, refusing to be pulled into her orbit. "This isn't about reputation," he said evenly. "It's about Zara." His mother laughed, not cruelly, but sharply. "Zara? David, you cannot be this naive." He froze. "That woman," she continued, "kept a child from you for years and now she reappears? With a daughter who looks exactly like you? This is not coincidence. This is strategy." David's voice darkened. "Stop. Right now." His mother raised a brow, surprised by the firmness. You're emotional, I understand. But you need to think rationally. This situation could damage everything, your image, your future, your commitments, your position. This isn't about my position. He snapped, louder than intended. A few people in the distance glanced over. He lowered his voice. This is about my daughter. His mother's expression hardened, the first crack in her polished exterior. You don't know that yet. I do, he said firmly. I saw it the moment I looked at her. That's not paternity, she said with an icy calm. That's sentiment. It's truth, he countered. His mother exhaled, frustrated. David, you cannot allow this to disrupt your life. You are on the cusp of a major acquisition. You cannot afford distractions. I'm allowed to have a life, he replied. You're allowed to have the right life, she corrected, not one that throws unpredictability into everything we've built. David stepped forward, his voice low. What we built, or what you build for me. Silence. His mother's eyes sharpened. Be very careful where you're going with that. David didn't back down this time. He felt something inside him shift, the same stubborn resolve he used to bury under compliance. I've spent my entire adulthood following directions, he said. Yours, the board's, the company's. I didn't question anything, didn't push back, didn't choose anything for myself. And you have thrived, she said firmly. Because of that discipline. I have survived, he corrected. I haven't lived. His mother weighed his words carefully, then crossed her arms. And you think this child will fix that? She's not a fix, he said. She's a part of me. She's a vulnerability. She's my daughter. His mother's eyes flickered with something sharp. If this gets out, the press, I don't care about the press. The investors, I don't care about them either. The family, he cut her off. I'm done letting other people decide what's acceptable for me. She inhaled sharply, caught off guard by the rebellion in his tone. David continued, quieter now but with more conviction than she'd heard from him in years. I'm not abandoning her. I'm not stepping away. I'm not renegotiating this. Zara is mine, and I will be part of her life. His mother's voice dropped into a colder register. You're making a mistake. No, he said. I'm finally correcting one. A long pause stretched between them. Tension, fear, pride, and something deeper beneath it all. What does Pamela want? She asked, voice laced with suspicion. She wants to protect her daughter, he said. That's all she's ever done. From whom? From anyone who didn't see Zara as a child first, he said steadily. And honestly, I understand why she worried. His mother's jaw tightened. David stepped toward his car, pulling out his keys. This isn't finished, David, she warned. He opened the door. You're right, he said without looking back. It's not. He paused before getting inside, his voice low, not angry, not afraid. But I'm done operating your way. He shut the door gently, started the engine and drove off, leaving his mother standing alone under the parking lot light. She watched his car disappear, her expression unreadable, but her fingers pressed together tightly, betraying her tension. For the first time in a long time, David wasn't following her script, and that terrified her. Pamela's apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft rhythm of Zara's breathing as she slept in her room. The night had stretched longer than she expected, from the surprise in the exam room to dinner at the diner, to the tender moment of watching David carry Zara in his arms like he'd done it every day of her life. Pamela sat alone on the couch now, elbows on her knees, hands clasped, staring at nothing. Her mind was racing in too many directions. She hadn't expected any part of today to unfold the way it did. Certainly not reconnecting with David. Certainly not dinner. Certainly not watching Zara cling to him like she had known him forever. But one truth sat heavier than all the others. His family knows. Those words kept circling her thoughts like a warning siren. She'd lived a peaceful, private life for years. A life she built deliberately, carefully, intentionally. She kept her world small to keep it safe. She kept Zara close to protect her. She avoided anything that resembled the chaos David's world came with. So when her phone buzzed, she already felt the dread blooming in her chest. She reached for it with shaky fingers. David, Pamela, can I stop by? It's important. Her pulse kicked. She typed back. Pamela, is everything okay? A few seconds passed. David, I just want to talk. Please. A fresh wave of tension rolled through her. He wouldn't text like that unless something was wrong. Pamela stood, grabbed her robe and glanced down the hallway to make sure Zara was still asleep. Then she locked the front door chain, turned on the small lamp by the couch, and waited. When she heard the knock, it wasn't loud, just 2 soft taps, cautious, respectful. The kind of knock someone uses when they know the person inside might be overwhelmed. She cracked the door. David stood on the other side, shoulders tense, eyes carrying exhaustion and something else, something heavier. "Hi," he said quietly. She opened the door wider. "Come in." David stepped inside, and the moment he crossed the threshold, Pamela felt the entire energy of the room shift. Something had happened. "Is Zara asleep?" he asked softly. "She went down a while ago," Pamela said. "What's going on, David?" He ran a hand through his hair, not dramatically, but with a weight that showed he was processing every word carefully. "My mother confronted me tonight," he said. Pamela's stomach dropped. "What?" "She followed me," David admitted. "Or maybe she was already there. I don't know. But she saw Zara, and she knows." Pamela took one step back, instinctively placing distance between herself and the news. Her breath turned sharp. "David, no," she whispered. "No, no, no. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to know yet." "I know," he said gently. "You told me today we had time," Pamela said, voice climbing. "You told me we could figure out how to introduce this slowly, and now your mother knows." "David, your mother is—" "I know what she is," he said firmly. Pamela paced, running both hands through her hair. "This is exactly what I feared. This is exactly why I didn't tell you 4 years ago. This is why—" David stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "Pamela, look at me." She didn't, so he softened his tone. "Please." Slowly she stopped pacing and raised her eyes. David's voice was steady. "I told her I'm choosing Zara. I told her I'm choosing both of you. I told her I'm done letting anyone control how I live my life." Pamela stared at him, stunned. "You said that to her?" "Yes." "Tonight?" "Yes." "And she didn't—" "She tried," David said. "She tried everything she always does. But I didn't bend this time." Pamela blinked rapidly, trying to catch up to the idea of David, the man molded by high expectations, the man who bowed to his family's image demands, finally pushing back. "You stood up to her," she whispered. "I did," he said simply. "Because I'm not losing my daughter, and I'm not losing the chance to fix what I broke with you." Her breath hitched, and she turned away, overwhelmed. David didn't try to stop her. He let her walk to the window and steady herself with a hand against the glass. "Pamela," he said softly, "I know this is terrifying. I know my family is loud and powerful and complicated. I know this isn't the quiet world you built for Zara. But I need you to hear me." She didn't move. "I'm not letting anyone hurt her," he said. "Not my mother, not the board, not the press, not anyone." Pamela closed her eyes as tears threatened, not from pain but from the collision of fear and relief. She whispered, "I've done everything alone for so long that I don't know how to trust someone else to protect her." David stepped forward, voice gentle. "Then trust me, one step at a time. Not all at once, just one moment at a time." Pamela stayed silent for several seconds. Then she turned around. David's eyes softened instantly when he saw her expression, not broken, not hardened, just scared and open at the same time. "I don't want her pulled into something she can't understand," Pamela said. "Zara is innocent. She doesn't know about power struggles or image management or family politics. She just knows who makes her feel safe." "She feels safe with you," David said. "And she feels safe with me too." Pamela hesitated. David continued gently, "Pamela, tonight at dinner, she reached for my hand at the crosswalk without even thinking. That wasn't an accident. That was instinct." Pamela looked down, warmth and fear mixing in her chest. "She likes you. I like her too," he said quietly. "More than I can explain." Her shoulders sagged, the tension slowly shifting into something less sharp. "Tell me exactly what your mother said," Pamela whispered. David didn't sugarcoat it. He explained the confrontation in the parking lot, the accusations, the pressure, the threat of reputation, the implication that Zara was a liability. Pamela closed her eyes, jaw tightening. "That's what I was afraid of." "I know," David murmured. "But I shut it down." "You think she'll stop?" "No," he admitted. "But she'll adapt. She always does. And I'll be ready this time." Pamela studied him, trying to reconcile the man who once vanished behind spreadsheets and boardroom demands, with the man standing in her living room now, steady and protective. "You're different," she whispered. His voice was low, sincere. I'm choosing differently now. They held each other's gaze. Then, a soft sound broke the tension. The creak of Zara's bedroom door. Pamela turned quickly. Zara peeked out, rubbing her eyes, curls messy from sleep. "Mommy, I heard talking." Pamela knelt. "It's okay, baby. Go back to bed." Zara blinked, then noticed David. "Mr. David," she said sleepily, voice tiny. David crouched down instinctively. "Hey, sweetheart. Why are you here?" Zara yawned. "I wanted to make sure your mommy was okay." Zara nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Then she toddled over and placed her hand on David's shoulder. "Mommy is scared sometimes," she said quietly. "You have to talk soft." Pamela swallowed a gasp, embarrassment and awe mixing inside her. David nodded solemnly. "I'll always talk soft. I promise." Zara smiled at that, a small sleepy smile, then leaned her head briefly against his shoulder in a gesture so natural it made Pamela's heart twist. Pamela lifted her gently. "Come on, little one, back to bed." Zara let herself be carried away, but before the door closed, she whispered, "Good night, Mr. David." David whispered back, "Good night, Zara." The door clicked shut. Pamela stepped out again, closing it quietly. When she turned around, David was standing there, hands in his pockets, expression steady. "She trusts you," Pamela said softly. "I'll earn that trust every day," he replied. Pamela leaned against the wall, exhaustion washing over her. "This is going to get harder before it gets better." "I know. You still want to do this?" she asked. David didn't hesitate. "With everything in me." Pamela inhaled deeply, a long, measured breath, and then she gave the smallest nod. "Okay," she whispered. "Then we'll take the next step." David stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough for her to feel the conviction radiating from him. "I'm here," he said quietly. "I'm not leaving." Pamela closed her eyes, letting his words settle into the parts of her heart that needed reassurance the most. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was protecting Zara alone. David drove home from Pamela's apartment with the windows slightly cracked, letting the cool night air hit his face. Normally a late drive like this would settle him. Something about the quiet highways of DC at night always helped him organize his thoughts. But tonight wasn't quiet inside him. Tonight was a storm. Pamela's fear, Zara's sleepy trust, his mother's cold threat, and the undeniable truth that the life he'd been living, the one shaped by expectation, business, and appearances, was no longer the life he wanted. When he pulled into the garage of his townhouse, he didn't go inside immediately. He sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, replaying Pamela's words. "You're different." He wanted to be worthy of that. He finally stepped out and walked inside. He thought the night's drama was over. He was wrong. His father and mother were waiting in the living room. His father, a quiet but imposing man who rarely raised his voice, sat with his hands clasped, elbows resting on his knees. His mother stood behind him, arms crossed, looking like she had been pacing before he arrived. David froze in the doorway. "Did you invite yourselves in?" he asked dryly, "or did you break in?" "We used the spare key," his mother replied without shame. "Don't be childish." He shut the door behind him. "It's midnight. All the more reason for urgency," his father said. "We have a situation." David's jaw tightened. "No. You think you have a situation. I have a daughter." His mother lifted her chin. "You have a problem." He stepped forward. "Say that again." His father cleared his throat, raising a hand to diffuse the tension. "David, sit. We need to talk about the implications." "No," David replied. "You need to listen." His mother scoffed. "Listen, to you, the same son who didn't bother telling us he had a child for 4 years." David shot her a sharp look. "I didn't know, Mom. I found out today." She ignored that. "You had dinner with them?" "Yes," David said, unfazed. "You went inside her home?" "Yes." "You held that child?" "Yes." His mother looked at his father, stunned. He's not denying anything. Then she turned back to David, voice sharpening. "Do you understand what this could do to the family name?" David took a deep breath, not to calm himself, but to hold back the frustration clawing at him. "I'm not ashamed of her," he said. "And she's not a headline. She's a child. My child." His father leaned back, exhaling. "David, the press will devour this. A 4-year-old child the public never knew about. Investors will ask questions. The board will demand explanations. Our partners." That's enough, David said sharply. Both parents stopped. My life is not a press release, he continued. And Zara is not a disruption. She's my daughter, and I'm going to be in her life. His mother stepped forward, voice dropping to that dangerous, cold register she used when she wanted control. You are jeopardizing everything we've built. David stared at her. You built it, not me. His father stiffened. David continued, his voice calm but firm. I've been carrying the weight of your dreams for years. I've sacrificed more than you know. And I'm telling you both, right now, I'm choosing differently. I don't need your approval. I don't need your strategy. I don't need your fear. His mother took a step closer. What about responsibility? What about humanity? He countered. What about actually being a father instead of a figurehead? What about being a present person instead of a puppet? His father stood now, not out of anger but out of concern. David, slow down. I've been slowing down my entire life for you, David replied. For your comfort, your image, your expectations. And while I've been doing that, I've lost time, years, with a child who looks at me like she's known me forever. His mother's lips tightened. This woman manipulated you. No, he said firmly. She protected her child, something you seem unable to understand. He saw the hit land. His father tried again, softer this time. David, we only want what's best. No, David interrupted. You want what's predictable, what you can control, what makes sense on paper. His mother's voice cracked slightly. And you think this woman and her daughter are best for you? Yes, David answered without hesitation, because for the first time, I feel like I'm building something real. His mother blinked, momentarily speechless. David continued, quieter now but no less powerful. I'm not abandoning my career. I'm not losing my ambition. But I'm choosing my daughter over ego. I'm choosing a life that's honest instead of polished. His father studied him for a long moment. You've made up your mind. I have. And what do you expect us to do? His mother demanded. David took a breath. Respect it, he said. His mother shook her head slowly. I won't watch you throw away everything for my family, he finished. Yes, you will. His father sat back down, exhaling harshly. His mother opened her mouth to speak again, but David raised a hand. I'm not discussing this anymore tonight. I'm exhausted, and I'm done explaining basic love to people who raised me. His mother's face hardened. If you go through with this, there is no if, David said. I already have. Silence filled the room like a thick weight. Finally, his parents walked toward the door. His father paused, giving him a long, heavy look, one filled with conflict but not hatred. His mother kept her gaze straight ahead. David followed them, opened the door and waited. This isn't the end, she said coolly. No, David replied. It's the beginning. He closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned his forehead against it. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt free and terrified and committed. But he didn't waver. He pulled out his phone. No missed calls, no texts from Pamela, but he typed anyway. David, I stood up to them, all the way. I meant every word I said earlier. He stared at the screen, wondering if she was awake. Then the dots appeared. Pamela, I heard some of it. David straightened. Pamela, your mother called me. His heart dropped. Pamela, she tried to intimidate me. She said I was overreaching. She said Zara was a threat to your stability. He closed his eyes, anger tightening in his chest. David, I'm sorry. She had no right. I'll fix this. A pause. Then Pamela responded. Pamela, you didn't defend us just because you felt obligated, David. I heard it in her voice. You defended us because you wanted to. David exhaled, relief washing through him. Pamela, that means something. He typed slowly. David, it means everything. Another pause. Then Pamela wrote, Pamela, let's take the next step tomorrow. Zara would like to see you. David's chest tightened, but in the warmest way. David, I'd like that. More than you know. He set the phone down, sat on the edge of his couch, and breathed. He'd lost battles before. He'd made mistakes before. But this, protecting Pamela and Zara, was the first fight that felt like it mattered. And he had no intention of losing it. Morning sunlight filtered through Pamela's living room blinds in soft stripes, gently brushing across the floor and Zara's toys scattered from the night before. Saturdays usually carried a slow, familiar rhythm, pancakes, music humming softly from the kitchen, and the occasional race between Zara and her stuffed animals. But today felt different. Pamela woke with a heaviness she couldn't name and a hope she couldn't deny. David was coming over, not as a patient, not as an old flame, not as a man testing the waters, but as a father intentionally stepping into the life he'd missed for 4 years. Pamela sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, rubbing her hands together as if the motion could settle her nerves. She glanced at the small picture on her nightstand, one of Zara at 2 years old, smiling with her cheeks full and curls wild. This was the center of her world, and she was about to share that center. A knock sounded on her slightly open door. "Mommy," Zara whispered, wearing pajamas covered in stars. "Is Mr. David coming today?" Pamela managed a small smile. "Yes, baby. He's coming." Zara grinned wide. "Can we show him the playground, the big slide too?" "We'll see," Pamela replied, smoothing her daughter's curls gently. "First, breakfast." Zara ran ahead excitedly, her voice already bouncing through the hallway. Pamela breathed deeply. She wasn't afraid of David hurting Zara intentionally. She was afraid of Zara loving him too quickly. Children loved with their whole hearts. No limits, no filters, no caution. And David, despite his flaws, had always been easy to love. She moved into the kitchen, starting the pancake batter. The smell of vanilla filled the tiny townhouse. Zara began stacking her stuffed animals around the living room, announcing loudly that they were guests for the day. At 9:07 a.m., her phone vibrated. "David, I'm outside. Only if you're ready." Pamela didn't reply. She walked to the window, peeked through the blinds, and saw him standing beside his car, not in a suit, not in polished leather shoes, but in simple jeans and a dark jacket. A choice. A signal. He wasn't showing up as the billionaire everyone else bowed to. He was showing up as a man hoping to earn a place in 2 hearts he had once lost. She opened the door. David turned immediately, hands in his pockets as if trying to soften his presence. "Good morning." Pamela nodded softly. "Come in." Zara sprinted into the foyer. "Mr. David." David crouched without hesitation. "Good morning, sunshine." That name slipped out easily, too easily, and Pamela felt a tug somewhere in her chest. Zara grabbed his hand. "We're making pancakes." "Oh, that's serious business," David replied. "Do you need help?" "Yes, you can flip them." "Mommy said flipping is dangerous." Pamela shot him a look. "I did not say dangerous." "You said it could cause smoke," Zara corrected proudly. David lifted a brow. "Should I be concerned?" Pamela crossed her arms, but couldn't stop the small smile forming. "We're fine. Come on." David followed them into the kitchen, where the mixing bowl waited on the counter. Zara dragged a chair across the floor, climbing onto it with practiced determination. "Can you stir?" she asked David. He picked up the wooden spoon carefully. "I can try." Zara tapped her chin dramatically. "Do you know how to stir? You look like you don't cook." Pamela's hand flew to her mouth to stifle a laugh. David placed a hand to his chest. "You're hurting my confidence." She giggled. "Stir, Mr. David." He did, slowly, wrongly, chaotically. Pamela stepped in. "Small circles," she instructed, guiding his wrist. Their hands brushed. The contact was brief but warm. Too warm for 2 people trying to pretend the past hadn't left scars. David looked at her, his eyes holding questions he wasn't ready to speak aloud. Pamela pulled back first. "Okay," she said quickly. "Let's cook." They flipped pancakes. David's first attempt landed half-folded, and Zara declared it creatively shaped, and soon the 3 of them sat at the dining table. It felt natural. David cut Zara's pancake into small pieces without being asked. Pamela poured syrup. Zara talked with her mouth half full about daycare, drawing pictures, and why blueberries were too suspicious to eat. David listened to every word with an expression that nearly broke Pamela open. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't posturing. He was trying. And trying mattered. After breakfast, Zara ran to her room to grab her shoes. Pamela started stacking plates. "You don't have to clean up," she told him. David picked up a glass anyway. "I want to help." Pamela hesitated, but allowed it. "Okay." He washed quietly beside her, handing her each plate to dry. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" he asked. "For showing up today. For being gentle with her. David's jaw softened. She deserves gentle. Pamela looked down. So do you. David paused, a quiet ache passing through him. Pamela. He said her name like it carried 4 years of regret and 4 years of longing. She shook her head gently. Let's take this slow, remember? He nodded. Slow, he echoed. They walked to the small playground a block away, a bright corner of Southeast with painted swings, families chatting, and kids running through mulch as if gravity couldn't catch them. Zara sprinted to the slide immediately. Watch me. David and Pamela stood side by side. His hands were in his jacket pockets. Pamela hugged her arms, trying to keep her composure and not think too deeply about how normal this all felt. Zara climbed up the ladder, paused dramatically at the top, and yelled, I'm brave. David cupped his hands. We believe you. She slid down with a squeal, landing in a pile of giggles. Then she ran straight into David's arms. He caught her effortlessly. Pamela's breath hitched at the sight. David lifted Zara onto his shoulders. She squealed again, grabbing his hair for balance. Don't pull too hard, he warned playfully. I'm just steering, she declared. I'm not a car, he replied. You drive like one. Pamela burst into laughter, the sound surprising her. David smiled at her, slow, warm, genuine. Something shifted then, quiet but real, an invisible thread tying the three of them together. A moment that felt like a preview of something fuller. Zara tugged his hair again. Can we go higher? No, David said, pretending to wobble. You already upgraded me to a tall taxi. A group of kids ran past. Parents chatted nearby. The neighborhood noise blended into a comforting backdrop. Pamela watched the two of them. Her daughter effortlessly perched on the shoulders of the man who had once broken her heart, and was now trying to piece something new together. She spoke softly. She feels safe with you. David swallowed. I want her to. I want her to know she never has to question that again. Pamela turned toward him, studying him. You're different. I'm trying, he said, voice low. I was absent before, emotionally. I prioritized everything except what mattered. You were overwhelmed, she said. We both were. He shook his head. But you still tried. And I didn't try enough. Pamela exhaled slowly. We can't rewrite the past. No, he agreed. But we can write the rest. The sentence lingered between them, heavy and promising. Before she could respond, Zara leaned forward. Mommy, she asked, can Mr. David come again tomorrow? Pamela froze. David looked at her, waiting. Zara waited too, eyes wide, full of innocent hope. Pamela hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, baby. Zara cheered. David didn't cheer, but his smile was enough. As they walked back toward the townhouse, Zara holding both their hands, Pamela felt something she hadn't felt in years. A family rhythm, not perfect, not defined, but forming. Just as they reached the door, David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted. Is everything okay? Pamela asked. He hesitated, then showed her the message. From Jonathan, board chair, urgent. We need to discuss the new relocation opportunity. Los Angeles. Call Maya Sap. Pamela's stomach dropped. David's eyes lifted to hers, full of conflict. The first real family moment had just begun, and already something was threatening to pull it apart. For a long moment, David didn't move. He stood on Pamela's small front step, the neighborhood buzzing quietly around them, someone mowing a yard down the street, children laughing at the far end of the block, a dog barking behind a fence. But everything inside him went still. The relocation message stared back at him from his screen, a sharp reminder of the world he had spent the past week fighting to free himself from. Jonathan didn't send casual messages. A relocation opportunity wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning wrapped in corporate language. Pamela saw his expression shift. What is it? She asked, her voice careful, protective, already bracing for answers she didn't want. David turned the phone toward her. She read the message, and her stomach dropped. She whispered, Los Angeles? He nodded. It's not random. My mother is behind this. The board listens to her. She's trying to pull me away, literally, and make distance between me and you, between me and Zara. Pamela exhaled a shaky breath. Of course she is. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so Zara, who had gone inside to grab a coloring book, wouldn't overhear. But that's not the worst part. There's something else. Pamela froze. David, what else? He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. My family isn't waiting for me to make decisions. They're moving behind the scenes. I got an email this morning from their attorney. Pamela's throat tightened. What kind of email? David hesitated, not because he wanted to hide anything, but because he wasn't sure how to deliver a blow without worsening the pain she already carried. Pamela, he said softly, they're planning to propose a legal adjustment. Adjustment? She repeated. David, what does that mean? He took a breath and whispered, they want Zara to take the Harrington name. Pamela went cold. Every muscle in her body stiffened, and the faint Saturday breeze suddenly felt sharp and intrusive. No, she said immediately. Absolutely not. She is not, she will not be pulled into your family's world. I knew this would happen, David. I knew it. He held out his hand, gently. Pamela, no. Her voice trembled with fear and anger. They've known about her for 20 seconds and they're already making demands, already trying to control her, already trying to claim her. He stepped closer. They don't get to claim her. She shook her head, pacing slightly on the small porch. They think they can do whatever they want. They think they can buy everything, control everything, rewrite everything. I told you this was the nightmare I was scared of. David reached for her, but she took a step back. Pamela, he said softly, that's not all. She froze again. He swallowed, the next words heavier than the first blow. They're pressuring me to sign a document agreeing to consider joint custody. Pamela's body went rigid. She stared at him as if the ground beneath her shifted. No, she whispered. They did not say that. He nodded. They did. Her breathing quickened. Joint custody? With people who don't know her? With people she's never met? With a family who just threatened me 2 days ago? David shook his head. Pamela, listen. This is not me. This is not what I want. This is my family pushing. This is my mother pulling strings she has no right to touch. Tears welled in Pamela's eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let them fall. You knew they were powerful, she whispered. You knew they'd try something. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't know it would escalate this fast, he said honestly. And because I thought, after last night, that maybe they'd finally back down. Pamela let out a small, humorless laugh. People like them never back down. They crush anything that doesn't obey. Pamela, she held up a hand. No, let me finish. Her voice trembled with equal parts courage and fear. I have spent 4 years protecting Zara, working long nights, losing sleep, missing holidays, making every decision alone, not because I wanted to, but because I was scared of exactly this. Scared of someone with resources and lawyers and influence walking into her life and snatching control. Scared of losing my daughter to a world that doesn't see us as humans, only as assets. David listened, every word slicing deeper than the last. And I opened the door to you, she whispered. I let you into her life, into our world. I let myself believe you were different. But now they're sending legal offers, custody hints, demands about her name. Her voice cracked. I can't do this, David. I can't. He stepped forward carefully, gently, like approaching a wounded animal who had learned not to trust hands that reached for her. Pamela, he said, voice low, steady, almost breaking. I'm fighting for you, for her, not against you. She wiped her face, eyes burning. Then fight harder. His chest tightened. Believe me, he whispered. I already am. Just then, the front door creaked open. Zara peeked out holding her coloring book, eyes wide and innocent. Mommy, are you sad? Pamela sucked in a breath, immediately forcing her expression soft. No, baby. Mommy's okay. Zara walked out and held up the book. I drew you both together. Want to see? Pamela's heart clenched. David looked like he might collapse. Zara flipped open the page. There were 3 stick figures. One tall with brown hair, one with curly hair, and one small one holding both their hands. Above it, in giant wobbly letters, she had written, My people. Pamela almost broke into tears right there. David swallowed hard, kneeling beside her. Can I keep this? He asked gently. Zara tilted her head. Do you like it? I love it, he said, voice shaking. Pamela had to look away before the emotion swallowed her whole. Zara skipped inside again, leaving the door open behind her. David stood slowly. Pamela, he said quietly, I'm not signing anything. Not the relocation, not the custody suggestion, not the name change, none of it. She turned toward him slowly, cautiously. I'm going to fight them, he continued. Every day, every hour, every minute. Whatever it takes, I will protect you both from their reach. Pamela stared at him, tears finally spilling, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming relief of hearing the one sentence she'd been waiting for since the moment he walked back into her life. David stepped forward, but still left space for her to decide. Give me the chance, he whispered, to show you that I'm not the man I used to be. I'm not weak when it matters anymore. I'm not tied to my family's decisions. I'm not going to be silent. Not now. Not ever again. Pamela's chest rose and fell, steady but emotional. The fight she expected to face alone. She wasn't facing alone anymore. Her voice broke softly. David, I don't want to lose her. You won't, he said firmly. Not to them, not to me, not to anyone. She looked down at his hand, open, not grabbing, not assuming, simply offering. Slowly, cautiously, she placed her hand in his. For the first time in years, Pamela didn't feel like she was standing alone on a battlefield. For the first time in his life, David felt what it meant to stand for someone rather than simply with them. He squeezed her hand gently. We handle this together, he said. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Together, and inside the house, unaware of the legal threats or the emotional war unfolding outside her door. Zara colored another picture. This time, she gave David a cape. The next morning began strangely quiet. Pamela wasn't used to silence. In her world, mornings meant the sounds of a 4-year-old humming while brushing her teeth, the kettle steaming, her aunt moving around the kitchen, and the rhythm of a worn apartment waking up to another day. But today, while Zara sat cross-legged on the floor coloring, Pamela stood in the doorway of her own living room, unable to shake the heaviness from yesterday's revelation. David's family hadn't simply threatened her stability. They attempted to shape her daughter's identity. They wanted to claim a child they had never cared about, never supported, never even knew existed until recently. The fact that they were already drafting legal angles, it rattled her to her bones. And yet, David's final words last night echoed louder than the fear. We handle this together. A promise she never expected to hear. A promise she had wanted for years without admitting it. A promise she didn't fully trust yet, but wanted to. Just as she exhaled, her phone buzzed on the counter. David. Her heart tugged in 2 directions, caution and hope. She answered, keeping her voice steady. Hello? Pamela, he said gently. Can I come by? There's something I need to tell you. Her stomach tightened. Is it about your family? Yes. And it's big. She hesitated before glancing at Zara, who was now drawing a giant sun wearing sunglasses. Come over, Pamela whispered. On my way. 10 minutes later, David stood at her door, but something in his expression had shifted. He wasn't panic-stricken. He wasn't conflicted. He wasn't debating a choice. He looked resolved, as though a battle had already been fought and he had emerged with a decision. Pamela opened the door slowly. You look different. Because I am, he said quietly. She stepped aside to let him in. He walked into the living room, where Zara looked up and grinned. Mr. David, I drew a breakfast. He smiled softly. A breakfast? She held up a paper with a stack of pancakes drawn in multiple colors. See? Purple pancakes. They're grape-flavored. David laughed, a warm, full sound that filled the space gently. Those are the best kind. Pamela watched him as he crouched to admire Zara's illustration. Something inside her tightened. A quiet ache, a mixture of longing, fear, and something else she wasn't ready to name. After a moment, David stood and nodded toward the dining table. We should talk, he said. Pamela nodded and walked with him to the table, sitting carefully. David sat across from her but leaned in, elbows resting on his knees, eyes steady, focused entirely on her. I met with my family this morning, he began. Pamela flinched. David. Let me finish, he said, voice steady but soft. She swallowed, bracing. They demanded 2 things, he said calmly. First, that I accept the relocation proposal. Second, that I push forward with the legal adjustment, the name change, and eventually, custody. Pamela's breath hitched. David continued before she could speak. And I told them no. Pamela blinked. You... What? I refused everything, he said. Every single demand. I told them my life isn't theirs to shape, and that my daughter," his voice softened painfully, "is not a bargaining chip." Pamela stared at him, unable to speak. "I told them," he continued, "that Pamela and Zara come before any boardroom, any inheritance, any expectation. And I told them that if my mother ever contacts you again, I will cut every remaining tie." Pamela's lips parted slightly, her chest rising in a tremble. "You said that?" she whispered. David nodded. "I said all of it." "What did they do?" "They didn't take it well." He gave a faint, sad smile. "My mother tried to guilt me. She said I was throwing away my future." Pamela swallowed hard. "And what did you say?" "That I already threw away the most important future once," he said, eyes locked on hers. "I'm not doing it again." Her heart hammered. David leaned in closer. "I meant it last night, Pamela, and I mean it even more today. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing Zara, not in a rushed, chaotic way, but with intention, with clarity, with commitment." Pamela's voice barely held together. "David, why now, after all this time?" He exhaled slowly. "Because I finally realized that choosing my family doesn't mean losing my identity. It means becoming who I should have been from the beginning." Her eyes shimmered, but she blinked quickly, refusing to let tears fall yet. "And," he added gently, "I need you to know something." Pamela straightened slightly. "What?" "I didn't leave my family today," he said. "I walked away from the old version of myself." Pamela's breath caught. "You're proving," she whispered, "that you've changed." He shook his head. "I'm proving that I'm changing. Present tense. Because this," he motioned softly around the home, toward Zara's drawings, toward Pamela's steady presence. "This requires growth every day, and I'm showing up for that." Pamela's chest tightened again, but this time the tightness felt warm, gentle, familiar, like the version of David she loved years ago had finally come home. She angled her face away, trying to compose herself, but he noticed. "Pamela," he said softly, "talk to me." She shook her head. "I'm trying, but this is a lot. Tell me what scares you." She hesitated, then whispered, "That you'll change your mind, that one day you'll wake up tired of trying, that you'll decide Zara is too complicated, that I'm too complicated." David reached across the table, slowly, respectfully, and rested his hand near hers, not touching yet. "Pamela," he whispered, "I didn't change my mind when you walked out of that exam room. I didn't change it when you told me she was mine. I didn't change it when your voice shook with fear last night. And I didn't change it today, when my entire family stood against me." Her eyes flickered down to his hand. "You need consistency?" he whispered. "Watch me." A small, involuntary breath escaped her. He wasn't proving himself with promises. He was proving himself with actions, with sacrifice, with boundaries, with hard choices, with courage he had never shown before. She lifted her eyes slowly. "What do you want, David?" she whispered. He didn't rush. "I want to build a life with my daughter," he said softly, "and I want to earn the right to stand beside you while I do it." Pamela's lips trembled. "Earn," she repeated. "You understand that part?" "Yes," he said. "Because you don't owe me trust. I owe you consistency." For the first time since their reunion, she didn't hide her heart. Something inside her softened, subtly, but undeniably. A warmth she'd been fighting finally pushed through the cracks of her fear. She whispered, barely audible, "I see the difference in you." He nodded, his voice almost a whisper. "Good, because I'm not done." At that exact moment, Zara walked in carrying 2 drawings. One was her and Pamela. One was her and David, both labeled with her growing handwriting. Zara climbed onto Pamela's lap, holding the drawings up proudly. "Mommy, I made 2 pictures, one for you and one for Mr. David." David smiled gently. "Can I have mine?" She hopped down, placed the picture into his hands, beaming. "I gave you a bigger smile this time," she said. David barked out a soft laugh. "It's perfect." Pamela watched him, really watched him, as he held his daughter's artwork like it was a priceless certificate. Her last wall cracked. Not enough to fall completely, but enough to let light in. She wasn't ready to say she trusted him completely. She wasn't ready to say yes to forever, but she was ready to say, "Let's keep going." And when she finally whispered it, David's entire face softened with something she hadn't seen from him in years. Hope. Sunday afternoons in Southeast D.C. carried their own rhythm. Children riding scooters along the sidewalk, neighbors grilling on small porches, distant bass from someone's car stereo humming through the blocks. Inside Pamela's apartment, though, the air felt different, softer, warmer, still fragile, yet changing. Zara was sprawled on the living room rug with a small pile of crayons scattered around her. She hummed to herself while working on another drawing, this one larger, more detailed. Pamela watched her from the couch, her hands wrapped around a warm mug even though she wasn't drinking from it. David sat on the floor a short distance from Zara, not intruding, not taking over, just present, something he never knew how to be years ago. For a few minutes, the three of them existed in a gentle pocket of time. Zara didn't look up when she said, "Mr. David, what's your favorite color?" He blinked, caught off guard. "My favorite color? She finally glanced at him, waiting, I guess. "Blue," he said, "like the sky when it's calm." Zara nodded seriously, choosing a crayon. "I'm gonna put blue on your shirt, then." He laughed. "That works." Pamela hid a smile behind her mug. Watching them together was like watching two halves she'd kept separate finally discovering they were meant to fit. But beneath the sweetness lived a truth she knew couldn't wait any longer. David needed to tell Zara who he was. And Zara deserved to know. Pamela's heart squeezed at the thought. David felt the shift immediately. He always sensed her emotions. That hadn't changed since the beginning. He looked up. "Pamela?" She set the mug down and exhaled softly. "We should talk to her. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now." David straightened, his chest tightening. "You sure?" he whispered. She nodded. "You've earned this moment. And she deserves honesty. Real honesty. Not half-truths or hints." He inhaled deeply, bracing himself. "Okay." Pamela slid off the couch and sat beside Zara, gently touching her arm. "Baby, can you pause your drawing for a second?" Zara blinked up. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," Pamela whispered, brushing a curl behind her ear. "Nothing at all. Mommy just wants to tell you something important." Zara looked at David, then back at Pamela. "Is it about Mr. David?" she asked innocently. Pamela swallowed. "Yes." David's heart hit his ribs hard enough to echo. Zara scooted onto Pamela's lap, hugging her legs loosely. "Okay, I'm listening." Pamela looked at David, not with hesitation this time, but with the steadiness of a woman handing someone the most delicate part of her soul. "You can start," she whispered. David moved to sit directly in front of Zara, not too close, not too far. He rested his hands on his knees, grounding himself. "Hey, Zara," he said softly. She smiled. "Hi." He exhaled a shaky breath. I need to tell you something really important, something about me, and something about you." Zara tilted her head. "Is it a secret?" "No," he said with a small smile. "Not a secret. Just something you should have known earlier." She blinked up at him, waiting with those big curious eyes, the same eyes he saw staring back at him in the exam room. "I didn't know you before this week," David said gently. "But I should have. I really should have." Zara nodded slowly, still not fully understanding. "And I've been spending time with you," he continued, "because you're special, and because you're mine." Zara blinked again. "Yours?" David's voice cracked. "I'm your dad, Zara." Silence. A deep, still kind of silence. Zara looked at Pamela. "Mommy, is that true?" Pamela stroked her hair, tears softening her voice. "Yes, baby." "It is." Zara looked back at David, her small eyebrows knitted together, not in fear, in thought. "You're my dad?" she repeated. David felt tears burn the back of his eyes. "If you want me to be," he whispered. "Only if you want that." Zara stared at him for what felt like the longest 10 seconds of his life. Then she asked quietly, "Did you know about me before?" David's breath broke. "No," he whispered. "I didn't. Not until a few days ago. And I'm so sorry I missed everything." Zara studied him, truly studied him, then climbed off Pamela's lap slowly. She walked toward David. He froze. She stopped in front of him, tiny hands fidgeting with the hem of her dress. "Are you going to stay?" she asked. David's heart cracked wide open. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm staying, Zara. I'm not going anywhere. Ever." Her lips trembled. Then, in one small brave motion, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. David's breath punched out of him. He held her carefully, like a fragile gift he'd been trusted with after years of absence he wished he could undo. Pamela covered her mouth with her hand, tears rolling freely now. She hadn't expected the moment to hit this hard. Zara rested her cheek on David's shoulder and whispered, "Okay." David closed his eyes. "Okay," he repeated, voice shaking. They stayed like that, father and daughter, for what felt like a lifetime. When Zara finally pulled away, she wiped her eyes dramatically. "Now you have to let me draw you better," she said seriously. "Dads need better smiles." David laughed through his tears. "I'll try my best." Pamela's heart swelled, painfully, beautifully. She felt something open inside her she had been holding shut for years. A quiet forgiveness, a cautious hope, a beginning she didn't see coming, but was ready for. Zara happily returned to her crayons, humming again. David stood and walked toward Pamela slowly. She didn't back away this time. He spoke softly. "Thank you for letting me be here for that." Pamela nodded. She needed it. "And so did you." "And you?" he asked gently. "What do you need?" She looked up at him, really looked, and for the first time there was no wall, no shield, no distance, just truth. "I need a partner," Pamela whispered. "Not someone perfect, not someone with all the answers, just someone who tries, someone who shows up, someone who doesn't run when it's hard." David's eyes softened. "I want to be that man for you, for both of you. And I want to believe you," she admitted. He exhaled. "Let me earn it, every day." She hesitated, then nodded. Not a dramatic nod, not a cinematic one, a real one, a human one, filled with fear and faith. He reached for her hand, gently, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers wove together as naturally as breathing. Not a reunion of fireworks, not a grand speech, something better, a beginning, a real beginning. Zara looked up and gasped dramatically. "Are you guys holding hands?" Pamela laughed, a real laugh, light and warm. "Yes, baby." Zara grinned. "Good. Families should hold hands." Pamela's breath caught. David squeezed her hand, soft, sure, steady. For the first time in 4 years, Pamela didn't feel alone. For the first time in 4 years, David felt whole. For the first time in her life, Zara saw her people standing together. A family, a simple, soft reunion, grounded, real, emotional, the kind that didn't need perfection, only effort, only honesty, only love in its quietest form. And as the afternoon sun warmed the room, the three of them stepped into a future none of them expected, but all of them wanted. Would you have forgiven David? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us what love really looks like.